Okay, let's work on an example. In late April, corporate treasurer projects that cash flows required 1 million ringgit bank borrowing on 15th of June at 3-month KLIBOR plus 1%. And the treasurer, so now, what we should do for hedging? What is the concern of the corporate treasurer here? The corporate treasurer predicts that they need 1 million ringgit on 15th of June at 3-month KLIBOR plus 1% interest rate. And now is April. So now is April, we are talking about June. So in June, we need to borrow money, right? In June, we need to borrow money. And at what rate? At 3-month KLIBOR plus 1% interest rate. So we will borrow at 3-month KLIBOR rate plus 1% based on the 15th of June rate. So on 15th of June, if KLIBOR goes up, if KLIBOR rate or interest rate on 15th of June goes up, I have to borrow, the corporate treasurer has to borrow at a higher price, at a higher cost, right? So this means that the concern for the corporate treasurer is if interest rate goes up. This means that the concern for corporate treasurer is if the underlying asset, means debt instrument price, goes down. Right. So this means that the corporate treasurer is long. He's long on the underlying asset, which is a debt instrument, right? So how to hedge? To short futures contracts, right? To short financial futures. This is the reason that treasurer needs to short futures. I'm using the same concept that we discussed here. So the corporate treasurer wants to borrow 3 months later at that time interest rate plus 1%. So if 3 months later interest rate goes up, he has to borrow at a higher cost. This means that his concern is what happens if interest goes up? We will have a loss. Not loss, I mean, we have to borrow at a higher cost, right? This means my concern is, or corporate treasurer concern is, if debt instrument or bond price goes down, this means he's long on the underlying asset, on the debt instrument. This means he's short or sell futures contract, right? So how many contracts? The size of the contract, as you remember, for financial futures, for KLIBOR futures contract, is 1 million ringgit. So how many contracts? One contract is enough to, so he needs to just short one contract because it's 1 million ringgit, right? And then now assume that on 20 April, KLIBOR rate is 6.25% and 15 June KLIBOR rate is 8.25%. So you can see that here he was right. Actually, his concern was if interest rate goes up, and actually interest rate went up on 20 April, 1 June KLIBOR futures contract. So today KLIBOR futures contract is traded at 93.45. And yep, now let's see. Okay. Okay, now let's construct the table that we always use. So the table consists of 2 columns and 2 rows. The first column is cash market, the underlying asset market. The second column is futures contracts market. The first row is today, the second row is later, 15th June. So on 20 April, we already know that we need to borrow 1 million ringgit on 15th of June. So I write just here, estimate 1 million ringgit required on 15 June. So this is the information that we have today. And current KLIBOR rate is 6.25%. So today the rate is 6.25%, but we don't want to borrow today, we want to borrow on 15th June. So we already identified the position here. You remember, person needs to short. We need to short futures contract. Short futures contract means you are long here, right? The same thing we already discussed. Open, you identify the position in one of the cells, you can identify the position of other cells. It means, as you already remember, if you are short here, the same the other cell on the same in the same row and same column cannot be on the same position. So here can, if it's short here, then long here, same row, same column, different, and then this must be short, because again, this is long, this means this should be short. This is long, this means this should be short. Anyway, so short futures contract. So we short 1 June KLIBOR futures contract at what price? 93.45. This means that the interest rate is 100%. 100 minus 93.45 means 6.55%. So the futures contract is, you can sell it now in the market at this price already given to you in the question. So you already completed what you have to do today, and then you go home and just wait until 15th of June that you need to borrow money. So on 15th of June, you need to borrow money. This was the initial plan, right? So you borrow 1 million ringgit at what rate? Here, you are supposed to borrow on 15th of June at 3-month KLIBOR plus 1%. Now, what is the KLIBOR rate now? KLIBOR rate on 15th of June is 8.25%. So you borrow at 8.25% plus 1%, right? This is based on the question. You already agreed with the bank that you will borrow at KLIBOR rate, this is KLIBOR rate, plus 1%. This means you can borrow at 9.25%. And there you go. Now, what is the interest that you have to pay? Interest expense is 1 million ringgit multiplied by, the cost is 9.25%, right? 9.25%. For how long you want to borrow? For 3 months. So you adjust it for 3 months, and then this means that the interest expense is 23,125 ringgit. Now, you already short 1 KLIBOR futures contract. Now you need to close the position. So you long the futures contract that you already short. At what rate? What is the rate on 15th of June? The rate 15th of June KLIBOR rate is 8.25% here, 8.25%. So 8.25%, this means that you can long futures contract at 91.57, which is, you remember the price is 100 minus KLIBOR rate. Now, is it profit or loss? You short at this price, you long later at this price. So selling is higher than buying. This means 93.45 minus 91.75. It will give you 170 basis point. And 170 multiplied, do you remember the tick size was 25 ringgit? So it will give you 4,250 ringgit profit. So, yeah. So your net expense, borrowing expense, will be 23,125 minus 4,250 ringgit. In other words, your net expense for this borrowing is 18,875 ringgit, right? Because you have some profit from the futures contract. It means the net cash outflow, the net expense is your interest that you have to consider on borrowing, and then you have something that some money also comes in, which is the gain that you have from using the futures contract. So now, what is the effective interest rates? Is 18,875 divided by 1 million ringgit, which is the amount that you borrowed. Then you adjust it for 3 months, because you borrowed it for 3 months and now you want to convert it to a year. To report it in percentage, I multiply it by 100 and you will get 7.55%. This means you could borrow at 7.55%. And the interesting thing is that it's 6.55 plus 1%, right? You remember here, you were supposed to borrow at KLIBOR plus 1%. So actually, although the interest rate increased, I mean, you actually, although you borrowed at 9.25% in June, but you actually, the interest rate, the effective interest rate you paid was not 9.25%, it was 7.55. And this 7.55 is the KLIBOR and the KLIBOR futures contract, the interest rate that you locked in, in April for June. So it's 6.55% plus 1%, because you in the beginning you agreed to, you wanted to borrow at KLIBOR plus 1%, right? So 6.55 plus 1% will give you 7.55. So you locked in the interest rate. So it doesn't matter what will be the interest rate later. If interest rate instead of 8.25 increases to 10.25, 11, 12, you still will pay. The effective interest rate that you pay is 7.55%. And this means that hedging. So for the previous topics, you locked in the price. Here, you lock in the interest rates.